Well, is gender related to political affiliation? Someone would say yes or no. We're gonna check the main panoramic and we're gonna see why conservative tends to be more related with men and liberal to women. First of all, we have to understand something. Men have always had the power among all political affiliations. Women recently on politics is a phenomenon very recently. Even though they were already so influential women in the past, what really detonates was the feminist movements of the 20th century. We would have to get to this place in 1960s. The 1960s and 50s, I remember to be one of America's, we're in a century in America, tend to be more of the American dream. It's what was America and how it was America. But for women, it was not hell, but it was really different than for men. Because, for example, in the 1950s, women were expected to have childs and to be in home. They were not allowed in jobs. They were just allowed in jobs when they were in the war effort, in the Second World War, and then they were sent home. And this is where all this started, because Republicans in the US really appreciate this movement who wanted to gain this liberal movement into women. They thought of that of conservative actions after that, and that's when the Democrats enter. And when the Democrats enter, women were more favorable to that party because they think, okay, we're not having trouble, even though it was just a political convenience. But women were the first time where they really feel representative when the first senators and the first judges start to getting in there. That could be the base of all this. As major writer Judith Butler in the U.S. says, gender is performative. It's constructed through repeatedly acts. So women want to end these acts, and they achieve mainly that goal. In the 1980s, by the way, things have changed a lot. It happens another generation than the 1960s. So their mothers and their grandmothers were given these 1980s, 1990s women more powers that they ever could imagine, especially in politics. And this is where all the bombs started, because in this particular year, Jimmy Carter, the Democratic president of the United States, lose elections against Ronald Reagan, which is meant to be America's biggest president there, the Republican symbol, the god of the Republican god. And women were very disappointed on Democrats, not just because they lose the election, because that's kind of normal in democratic countries, but they were really frustrated because even though women have achieved a lot of power in politicals and that, they feel that in the Democrats were not really given that power because of their ideas. They were given just as political advantage. And in this case, Ronald Reagan, a lot of people would say he's a Democrat, oh, he's really cool. But Reagan is one of those real pieces of Republicans that really opened its head to these gender ideas. He was contemporary to Margaret Thatcher, and he saw that women may have more intellectual and economic power. But here came another question. Is gender related really to something sociocultural or sociopolitical? I would say that yes, because for example, a Bloomberg study in the year 2012 that has actualized until this day said that, for example, women tend to have two political affiliation in the US, Republican and Democrats. And this study is very interesting because it says basically that the women that are more favorable to the Republicans are the ones who earn more than $2,100 a year, and sadly, the less favorable to the Republicans, the ones who voted for Democrats, are the ones who didn't achieve $75,000. So for this Bloomberg analyst who is called Nancy Fraser, it's very difficult to see that there's an economic way into see the things. Because, for example, a lot of artists have said that Republicans and conservatives especially are very persuasive because they all always attempted a glorious past, a past that in shape it was better, that do not end with this, and especially with the Obama era between 2008 and 2016, these ideas were really canalized and used by the Republicans. But here is the plot twist. Even though the Democrats have always have problems, they really achieved that equality. Because, for example, in 2008, Barack Obama, the first Afro American president, came to power, and with he came the first, one of the first women who were really into power. That was Hillary Clinton. And that demonstrated that women were not just the wives of president, as Hillary was of Bill Clinton. She was really a national security important piece. Also, we can achieve this by saying, if there's something racial about this, sadly we have to say yes. Because in this Bloomberg analyst, it also say that most of these women who earn that much money are white, and Democrats tend to gain more attention from Hispanic and Afro American women. So we could say that gender is relating to politics. We would say that yes, but not. As for example, Sowell said in his book Republicans and Democrats: A Gender Fight, is writing in 2017. She says that, for example, in the south states of the United States, who tend to be more conservative, women are more liberal because of all this pressure they have. They are not willing to be. And for example, the opposite happens on Democrat states. In California, for example, is willing to know that a lot of women changed their political affiliation after 2013 and continue on their Trump era. Also, we couldn't ignore this, that a lot of women supported this mega movement and these conservative movements by Donald Trump. And we can forget that, for example, Hillary Clinton in 2016 gained a lot of public resentment by women of their own party, who said she have only gained its presidential campaign because she was Bill Clinton's ex-wife, and that she shouldn't be there. It should be Bernie Sanders. So we can say that, but at the end we have examples of this. For example, Kamala Harris was the first vice president who was a woman, and a lot of things that achieved. So to answering this main question that we can answer, is gender a real present in politics? Yes. Because, for example, in this past election of 2024, it is willing that more advertisements were related to women than the ones with men. Because for a study said that it's very difficult for men to change their political affiliation. It's really known that the men will always choose a political affiliation, and in very few times it will change it. But women, in the same story as I have been citing on this video, it's really not easy, but they tend to change more of political affiliations. So as we can end here with a phrase I would say of this by Roy Stranger. Tradition institutionals contain accumulating wisdom. So I think that's why they vote for them, because it's better the past, even it's not. Thank you for listening.